You know that feeling, right? It's 11 p.m., you are completely exhausted, your eyes are burning, but you are literally unable to stop scrolling. Well, you're absolutely not alone. What you're experiencing is a perfectly engineered biological hijack. Today, in this explainer, we are taking a deep, scientifically grounded dive into the massive viral wellness trend known as the dopamine detox. We're going to cut through the noise, separate the TikTok fiction from the actual neuroscience facts, and most importantly, give you a structured, evidence-based way out so you can finally reclaim your focus in a world that is literally designed to constantly distract you.
Okay, let's dive into this. 4 hours and 34 minutes. Think about that for a second. That is the amount of time the average American spends glued to their phone every single day. That's enough time to run a marathon. We are living in a society that is technically more stimulated than any other point in human history, and yet, paradoxically, we're reporting historically high rates of boredom, anxiety, and just a total inability to focus. This right here, this is the reality of our modern attention crisis.
So to get out of this mess, we have a clear path forward today. We'll start with the modern attention crisis, tackle the great dopamine myth, look at the pleasure-pain balance, lay out a science-backed protocol, and finish up with the timelines and true benefits. Rest assured, we are going to scientifically unpack this problem, correct all that faulty internet science you've been seeing, and get you an evidence-based game plan.
Starting with Section 1, the modern attention crisis, hijacking the brain's ancient reward system. To really understand why we're so distracted, we have to recognize that our brain's ancient survival systems are basically under attack. We live in an attention economy that's been deliberately engineered to force-feed us cheap, artificial stimulation.
Dr. Anna Lembke, a prominent psychiatrist over at Stanford University, puts the stakes in incredibly stark terms. She says, the smartphone is the modern equivalent of the hypodermic needle. Wow, right? What she means is that things like social media algorithms, those unpredictable variable reward schedules, the infinite scroll, they all act as supernormal stimuli. They are delivering these highly engineered, completely unnatural doses of stimulation straight into our neurobiology, creating this endless loop of instant gratification.
Which brings us to Section 2, the great dopamine myth, fact versus TikTok fiction. Now look, the absolute exhaustion you feel from screen time, that is 100% valid. But we need to pivot here, because the viral solution you see everywhere, the idea of literally detoxing from dopamine by locking yourself in a dark room, is biologically impossible. So let me ask you directly, can you actually detox from dopamine? The scientific answer is a resounding, definitive no. You cannot biologically starve your brain of a necessary chemical any more than you can detox yourself of, say, oxygen or blood. Dopamine is produced continuously. Without it, you wouldn't just politely lose interest in your phone, you'd literally lose the ability to move, to speak, to eat. So if we aren't literally detoxing the chemical, what on earth is actually happening?
To understand this, we have to clear up a massive fundamental misconception. Pop culture has taught us that dopamine equals pleasure, but actually scratch that. It's more like the chemical of anticipation, motivation, and prediction. It's the engine that drives us to seek things out. It's what makes you want something. It absolutely does not guarantee you're actually going to enjoy it once you get it.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is a framework developed by neuroscientist Kent Berridge. He made this absolutely critical distinction between wanting and liking. You see, the dopamine system drives the wanting, the intense craving, the relentless motivation to pursue a reward. But the actual experience of pleasure, the true liking of a thing, is governed by entirely different systems in your brain, like the opioid system. And this brilliantly explains why you can endlessly scroll for hours, desperately wanting that next hit of novelty, even though you aren't actually liking or enjoying the experience at all.
Let's step right into Section 3, the pleasure-pain balance, restoring your neurological homeostasis. If dopamine itself isn't the enemy, what is? Let's get into Dr. Anna Lembke's clinical framework, which is really the neurobiological meat of this entire explainer.
Your brain is constantly striving to maintain a stable internal equilibrium, a state known as homeostasis. Think of it like a giant seesaw inside your head. When you do something intensely stimulating, like swiping through hundreds of bite-sized videos, dopamine release tips that seesaw heavily toward pleasure. But here's the catch. The brain hates being off balance. To compensate, it pushes down on the other side, tipping the seesaw back toward pain. If you chronically overstimulate yourself, your baseline literally shifts. You start needing extreme stimulation just to feel normal. And when you finally put the phone down, your baseline state becomes one of anxiety, restlessness, and a total inability to feel joy in simple everyday things.
Now let's put that into perspective, because this brilliantly illustrates why a digital reset is actually manageable. When we look at the numbers, everyday tech use spikes dopamine by about 50 to 100%. By contrast, highly addictive hard drugs like cocaine or amphetamines cause massive spikes between 350 and over 1,300%. So the mechanisms are similar, but the downstream consequences are meaningfully different. What this proves is that, yes, your screen habits are compulsive and they absolutely hijack your reward system, but you are not facing a dangerous clinical withdrawal by stepping away. A behavioral reset is totally, absolutely within your reach.
So let's shift gears from theory into action with Section 4, the science-backed protocol, doing it right without extreme asceticism. A real dopamine reset is rooted in the work of Dr. Cameron Sapah, who actually coined the modern term back in 2019. And his framework isn't about extreme asceticism or locking yourself in a closet. It is based strictly on cognitive behavioral therapy.
See, Dr. Sapah's approach is highly practical. A real detox isn't about removing all joy from your life, it's about strategically targeting the specific behaviors that are causing you distress. You deliberately schedule time to avoid impulsive, high-stimulation activities like scrolling, binge-watching, or eating ultra-processed junk. But you don't just sit there and suffer. You replace those addictive behaviors with restorative, low-stimulation activities. We're talking walking in nature without your headphones, reading a real physical book, or cooking a meal from scratch. It's all about recalibrating your brain to appreciate a slower pace and sustained attention.
So the crucial point is how you actually implement this in your daily life. Step 1, audit your habits honestly for a week. Step 2, identify just 2 or 3 specific targets. Don't try to boil the ocean here. Step 3, and honestly this is the game changer, add friction. Delete the app, put the charger in another room, make the bad habit physically annoying to do. Step 4, design a solid replacement schedule. And Step 5, start small. Begin with just a 1 to 2 hour digital fast in the evening and build your way up.
Which naturally leads us to Section 5, Timelines and True Benefits, Managing Expectations for the Biological Reset. We have to be super realistic here, because a single 24-hour phone fast on a Sunday isn't going to magically cure your attention span by Monday morning. Brain resensitization is a gradual, biological process.
Let's move to and see how this builds over time. Days 1 to 3, they're going to be rough. You will absolutely feel heightened restlessness and intense boredom. But remember, this is simply the pain side of that pleasure-pain seesaw returning to baseline. It is literally just your brain healing. By days 4 to 7, that acute discomfort finally begins to ease up. By weeks 2 to 3, you're going to notice a significant improvement in your focus and your ability to just tolerate quiet. And by week 4 and beyond, assuming you've kept up with your replacement habits, those durable, lasting behavioral shifts will really solidify.
And the payoff for getting through that timeline is just immense. We are talking about genuine, science-backed benefits here. You'll experience vastly improved focus and attention because your prefrontal cortex isn't being constantly bombarded. You'll see better emotional regulation and a much calmer baseline. Your sleep quality will dramatically improve for sure. And you will find a renewed, intrinsic motivation for deep, meaningful work. This creates a beautiful, virtuous loop that ultimately restores your mental clarity.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Take a hard look at your daily habits and ask yourself, are you the author of your attention, or are you just a subject of someone else's algorithm? A science-backed dopamine reset is not about punishing yourself. In an age of endless artificial abundance, intentional restraint is the ultimate form of freedom. It's the choice to reclaim your own mind. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I truly hope you take these tools and use them to get your focus back.